everyone, welcome to this Mon Academy video. In this video, we want to give you a guide as to how to use the country matrices for your specific committee. And the idea here is that we're going to walk through what you would do as a delegate if you encounter these resources for the first time. And we're going to go through each aspect of these matrices to ensure that you can use them to the best of your ability to prepare yourself for conference this year. So let's start with how you would actually access the matrices. So you'd start by going to the MUN website, mun1.ymcace.org, and then you'd go to delegate assignments and find your specific committee. So I'm going to give the example of environment and technology. So as you can see, there's several links here, and they lead you to the topic descriptions, the cover page for the matrices, the country research paper sample, and the actual matrices. So let's get started with the matrix. Let's just see what it looks like. Well, just from a first glance, it can seem quite confusing. There's a lot of information here. There's multiple tabs, multiple columns, different statistics. And so our goal here is to show you what you would do if you were approaching this for the first time. Sorry for my laggy computer screen. So my country is Mongolia. So say I wanted to prepare myself best for a conference and figure out how to use these matrices to the best of my ability. Well, the first thing is, as you can see here, the matrices are organized based on the topics. So these are the 3 topics for environment and technology this year. So it might be a good idea to learn more about what these topics mean. So to that end, it can be useful first to read the topic descriptions for your committee. So this is what the topic descriptions look like. It's a 1 to 2 page summary of the topic with other issues, with other citations, other sources you can use to learn more. So I might say I read through the carbon sequestration topic, and the agriculture runoff topic, and the access to energy topic. So now ideally I have a good idea, a good background knowledge regarding these issues, and now I want to learn specifically about my country. Well, now we can go to the matrix. So say I wanted to learn about my country and its stance regarding carbon sequestration. So again, as I said, I am Mongolia, so I'm just going to search for Mongolia in the spreadsheet. I don't want to find it in place, I just want to find. I'll just do Command F. Alright, there you go. So I'll search for my country, Mongolia, and there you go. This is my country. So there's several things to notice here. The first is this block of text. This is meant to act as a summary of what your country's stance would be. So I might read this summary. So for example, Mongolia gets the vast majority of its electricity from coal. And that's important because from when I read the topic description, I'll know that retrofitting coal power plants is one of the quickest and most established ways of doing carbon sequestration. So that gives me an idea of what potential resolutions I might work on which are unique to the perspective of my country. I can also learn that industrial applications of carbon capture might not be as important for me, but I could focus on agriculture and improving grasslands and other natural methods of biosequestration. So that gives me another approach towards which I can design resolutions which might better that manner of achieving carbon sequestration. But you'll also see that there's these 2 numbers here, and this will be the case for any matrix you have. And these are 2 statistics handpicked by your officers, which they think will give you a additional information and context as to the nature of your country and their stance on the issue. So specifically for carbon sequestration, we see energy production from coal in terawatt hours and the percent of area covered in forests 2016. So if you haven't done the reading of the topic descriptions, this might seem relatively random. But if you have done the reading, which I suggest you do before you look at the matrices, you will find that, again, as before, retrofitting coal-fired power plants is a very effective way of doing carbon capture. And so if a country has quite a bit of coal production, that can be coal energy production, that can be your main venue towards tackling climate change through carbon sequestration. But also, from the topic description, you would find that forests are natural carbon sinks. And so a good way to both combat deforestation and habitat loss, but to also reverse climate change, is to increase, to reforest. But it's important to understand what climate you're in. So, for example, a country like Algeria, which just naturally doesn't support forests as well in its ecosystem, it might not be as good an idea to do it there as a country like Sweden right here, which is a forested country. So it can support those forests, and this allows us to know that you could potentially plant more trees there and target carbon sequestration that way. So for my country, Mongolia, I see that I have quite a bit of coal production. So that can be a venue through which I capture carbon. But as I see, I have almost no forest in Mongolia because Mongolia is dominated by the steppe, the grassland. And so that method of carbon sequestration might not be as viable. So that's how you'd kind of analyze your stance as a country for a specific topic. Obviously, you would go through the other topics as well and find your specific country. So, for example, again, Mongolia. I have to do Control F again. This is also important to note. We'll get to the categories later, but these are not strictly in alphabetical order. So you'd find for this country again, and do that for each topic. As you can see here, there's more statistics, and there's also very specific files regarding that country. So this is a little bit more context dependent. Most matrices will have 2 statistics, but some might choose to include other things as well. So that's for learning about your individual stance. But you'll notice that there are 2 other columns here, and you might be wondering what those are. Well, that's where matrices become very useful in helping determine potential allies. So let's use the carbon sequestration example again. So let's read what these two columns here say. This first one says, for these countries, implementing carbon capture in their energy production is the most efficient way of reducing emissions. And here, this is a little bit more general. It says, should you use carbon sequestration in energy production? So what does this tell me? The officers grouped these countries based on them being in similar categories in their viewpoint on an issue. So, for example, these countries here all already installed carbon capture projects. So they've already taken the first step, which means that potentially they can be a role model and share their information with other countries. There are also other categories, such as countries which have to focus on industry, or countries which have to focus on biosequestration, or others which simply are too poor to focus on carbon capture and should focus on economic development. So what this tells me is that, say I am Mongolia again, and I've realized, hey, coal is a big deal in Mongolia, and perhaps I should write a resolution regarding providing funding for countries to retrofit their coal plants. who could I work with? Who could be a potential co-sponsor? Well, the beauty of these categories is that I have a whole group of other countries here, Iraq, Italy, Kuwait, who also see energy product, also for whom energy production is the main venue through which they can combat their emissions through carbon sequestration. So that can be very useful to help tame some of the chaos of unmoderated caucus. So you can have someone to go to actually in your first unmoderated caucus rather than trying to find some group to join. And that alliance would actually be in accordance with the actual perspectives of those countries. Just as one final resource regarding the matrices is that, say you don't really understand a statistic. So say you read a topic, or maybe you didn't read the topic, and you don't know why the percent of area covered in forest is important. Or say there's something like in agricultural runoff, these very technical statistics. So, what's the difference between pesticide and fertilizer? What do these plus and minus signs mean? Well, if you also go on the specific webpage for your committee, there will be a country matrix cover page. And so what this does is that it takes each statistic in each of the 3 topics and gives you a paragraph summarizing what exactly that information is and why it's useful. So, for example, I could go here to figure out, why are pesticides important as opposed to fertilizer, and I can find out what the positive or negative signs means in the statistic. So that's essentially it for matrices. Thanks for watching.